Hi, my name is Vicki. I'm the Accounting Partner Director here at Source Advisors. Source Advisors has been around for nearly as long as the R&D tax credit scheme itself, and we continue to provide support and assistance for accountants and their clients. Welcome to At Source, our series where we talk about all things R&D tax. Today I'm joined by Zaim Akhtar, one of our technical consultants, and we're going to be talking about R&D in software. Hi, Zaim.
Hi, Vicki.
As a start, why do you think people find it so hard to assess R&D and whether it's qualifying for R&D tax credit claims?
There's quite a few reasons that are unique to software. So I think one of the main difficulties with software projects is trying to strip out the commercial achievements against the actual technical achievement. So a lot of claimants focus on what the project achieved from a commercial perspective, whether it was successful, whether they developed some new features, or whether they developed, an enhancement to the product, but they don't really focus on what the underlying technology was and how that underlying technology evolved. Now, a commercial advancement may contain R&D, but that's not what the HMRC are interested in. They're interested in a laser-sharp focus on what you did technically, what the challenges were, and how you went about solving those challenges. Another area that's quite unique to software is that a lot of the challenges are intangible, and a lot of the advancements are intangible as well. So if you compare that to another field of science, say you compare that to engineering or manufacturing, there's a tangible output at the end, a product you can see, touch and feel. You can go into the workshop and you can see the prototypes. You can actually see the product evolution over time. You can see parts that have been scrapped. In software, that's all digital. So the actual advancements exist on lines of code or even in the developer's head. And that's something that's really difficult to evidence. And finally, I think what makes software unique is the rate of change of pace in the industry. Now, again, looking at engineering or even another industry like pharmaceuticals, they've got well-developed standards that do evolve, but they don't evolve at a rapid pace. In the software industry, things can change instantaneously. So a new framework being released, an update to an LLM, that can change what the current state of the art is. And it means that in terms of identifying that baseline and the technological advancement, it can be a bit of a moving target in software. So when you add those three things together, it can make identifying a software project and its eligibility quite difficult.
Okay, that's really interesting. So just to expand on that a little bit further, what would you say are the key indicators that a project is R&D as opposed to routine activity?
So what I like to do when I speak to claimants in the software sector is ask them a really open question. If at the start of your project, you could go back in time and you were able to hire the best developer in the world, would you have been able to solve the problem? Or would you still have had to undertake some experimentation? If the answer is, we probably would have been able to solve the problem, then it's unlikely to be software. If the answer is, no, even if we had the best developer in the world, we would have still had to do some experimentation, we would have still had to do some development because we were genuinely unsure if this solution was possible, then it's a good indication that R&D is taking place. Once you've established that filter, then I'd like to ask for a little bit more detail on a few key areas. Number one, was there any failures? Evidence of failures and evidence of frameworks that perhaps didn't quite work is a good indication that a solution wasn't readily deducible. I also like to ask, what did you actually check that existed in the industry? Did you go and do benchmarking against existing solutions? Did you check what your competitors were doing? If the answer is yes, we checked those, but they still weren't sufficient for what we wanted to try and do, then it's another good indication that R&D took place. Ultimately, if you are developing some new algorithms or you're coming up with perhaps new data manipulation techniques, there is an indication that there's been work done there, but we need to show that the research has been done and that the work that you've undertaken isn't something that was available in the public domain. It's something new, it's something that's pushing the boundaries, and it's something that required you to resolve some technical challenges.
One of the things we talk about a lot when it comes to R&D tax credit claims is the assessment of the baseline. I think lots of people find it perhaps a little more straightforward in manufacturing engineering of understanding where that baseline may be. And I think it is harder when it comes to software-related claims. So from your point of view, how do you assess the technological advancement and the baseline within software claims?
It's a really good question. So I think the best way to think of the baseline is just visualize a line in the sand. So you draw that line in the sand and you ask what existed at the outset of this project. So what was existing solutions out there? What sort of metrics were there? what sort of research had been published that dictated what that line in the sand was. And then the technical advancement is ultimately how you push that line in the sand forward. So, say for example, you had a cybersecurity toolset that could deal with a particular type of threat. That's your line in the sand. But there might be new threats that evolved over time or new threats to the market that toolset wasn't able to deal with. And to push that line forward, you've had to come up with some new solutions, some new pattern recognition. That's a good sign of R&D. Similarly, if you had to develop a solution that was required to have a really advanced level of latency, and you've established that the existing solutions could, say, for example, have latency of 200 milliseconds, but your solution needs to be a lot faster than that. You have to get down to 2 milliseconds. Your baseline is the 200, and how you push that forward is your technical advancement. So ultimately, establishing the baseline consists of reviewing what's out there, identifying what the limitations were, and if you're able to quantify those limitations, it really helps to make a solid case for a technical advancement as well.
So, aside from businesses that are undertaking software development, often businesses that are in different sectors undertake projects in the field of software, maybe software projects. So, maybe a manufacturing business or an engineering business that's undertaking a project, developing an ERP system, a CRM, or whatever it may be. Would those projects likely to be qualifying for R&D tax? What about things like integration or the development of APIs? Is that potential an area for compliance or not?
So it depends. So to give an example, if you are a civil engineering company and you have undertaken some research and development to develop a new bridge that uses materials that haven't been used before, and as part of that project, you use some software, the R&D is in the actual material development, it's not in the software. However, if you establish that existing software solutions weren't able to do what you needed and you had to push the boundaries and you had internal developers that had a background in software development in your company and they then carried out this development for you and managed to produce a piece of software that could do simulations that other software systems couldn't do, then there's an indication that there's R&D there. R&D really depends on being able to fulfill the HMRC's criteria. A key point in that criteria is that you have a competent professional in the field. So if you're undertaking a project within software engineering, we need to be able to demonstrate that there is an individual or a team that's taking part in that project or undertaking that project that has experience in software. They know what the current state of the art is, and they're able to identify that they need to resolve some technical challenges to get to the end point. And the second test that we need to show is we need to demonstrate to the HMRC that those technical challenges existed. If ultimately it became a routine problem solving step where they were able to get some documentation and come up with a solution, and that documentation was available in the public domain, it wouldn't necessarily qualify. So we have to be really careful. We have to ensure that there is a competent professional and there was a genuine technological uncertainty that they tried to overcome.
There's quite a lot to think about and lots of areas to assess when you look at that qualification. Obviously, as one of our technical consultants, you spend a lot of time in preparing R&D tax credit claims. But I know that you also spend time reviewing third-party claims, maybe where you've been asked to provide a health check or an assessment of another claim. In your experience, what would you say are the most common mistakes that you see in R&D tax credit claims around software?
So there's some key areas that really jump out and they're quite common. One is overclaiming and not properly establishing the project boundaries. So within an overall project, there might be elements of the projects that don't align with HMRC's criteria. I'm talking about things like market analysis, business analysis. Once the development's been completed, there could be post-development testing or commissioning. Those areas, while they're part of the project activities, they don't align with HMRC's criteria, and we need to ensure that they're stripped out in a claim. The second thing that is quite common is the focus on the commercial objectives. So there's not enough focus at times on the actual technological outputs. The focus is on what the development achieved commercially, whether it was successful, whether it failed for commercial reasons. And the HMRC aren't interested in that. So we need to ensure that all of the write-up is focused on the actual technical output. And finally, I think it can be quite difficult to pitch the technical narratives at a level that the HMRC can understand. So we see both sides of the spectrum. We see claims where there isn't enough technical detail. They maybe used a few buzzwords and they've not really established what the project was looking to achieve. Then on the other end of the scale, there's so much technical detail that an HMRC inspector would become overwhelmed by it and won't understand what's going on. So you need to ensure that the project is pitched properly. You're able to articulate all of the R&D, but you don't do it in a way that a non-technical person would be confused by.
I appreciate you don't have a crystal ball, and so you can't predict the future. But obviously, based on your experience, what do you think the direction of travel will be when it comes to R&D tax credit claims in software? I think with the rise of AI, ChatGPT, Copilot, whatever. Do you think they will impact R&D tax credit claims? Do you think that, whereas before people might have to research how to code something, now you can pop it in ChatGPT and it'll potentially deliver a result? Do you think that's going to fundamentally change R&D tax in software?
I think absolutely it's going to have some changes. Two things that jump out is the need for a competent professional and the need to establish the technical baseline. So now with AI assistants, and particularly AI assistants that are specific to coding, competent professionals have access to information that perhaps they didn't have before. And the baseline's constantly changing as well. So if you're able to prompt ChatGPT and it gives you a solution, that then becomes in the public domain and it's
Sure.
what's now readily deducible to a competent professional. So it will have an impact on how claims are structured, but the impact can be positive as well. Using these tools can be really helpful to evidence that the R&D took place. So if you're using AI assistants and tools like ChatGPT and other coding assistants, and they're still, even while using them, you're struggling to come up with a solution, it's a really good way of evidencing that there was a genuine technical uncertainty and what the baseline capabilities were. So it will have an impact. I think it will help claimants evidence what the R&D was, but at the same time, we'll also push the boundaries for what the technical baseline is. That'll be something that keeps evolving.
That's great. Final question, Zaim. Probably to circle back to where we started this conversation. We know that a lot of the accountants that we talk to and we work with really struggle in identifying where compliance eligibility may lie in software. So would you have any hints, tips, or things that you think accountants should be looking at or looking for to help them identify compliance within their clients?
There's a few questions that can be quite helpful, and they help me to cut through the noise when I'm speaking to claimants. The first question is, did you go and trial different solutions, or were you able to just do the work to achieve a solution? If they did the work and they achieved a solution, it's usually an indication that the R&D may not be there. But if they can articulate some of the trials and some of the difficulties they had during those trials, it's a good indication that the R&D was there. Secondly, I like to ask the question that I've spoken to you about before around if you're able to go back and hire someone and you had a blank slate and you were able to hire the best developer in the world, would they be able to come up with a solution for you, or would they still go through the same loops that you did? If the answer is that they would still go through the same loops that we did, it's again another strong indication for R&D. And finally, goes back to the technical baseline. We'd ask the clients if they're able to evidence the limitations of solutions that were already there. If they can evidence them, ideally quantify them, and show why they had to then undertake the R&D to improve on these existing solutions, then it's a good sign to take the conversation forward as well.
Thank you for joining us today, Zaim. That's been a really useful insight into R&D in software. Thank you very much.
Thank you.